Hey guys, it's Graham, a big welcome back to my channel, and yes, you read that right. In today's video, I'm going to be telling you everything you need to know before you visit Colombia. In today's video, I'm going to be covering some of the most important things you should know about visiting Colombia, like how much Spanish you should know, whether you should bring cash, what type of places you should stay in, tourist scams to avoid. All the big things that you're not going to hear anywhere else is the stuff that I'm going to be covering in this video, and I'm going to be giving you guys some tips that you absolutely cannot miss. I would have paid for these, and these are tips that my brother and I pulled together, him from his 3 months in Colombia and me from my 2 weeks. We've pooled our knowledge together here to make this the perfect guide for you guys when you're visiting Colombia. Before I jump into the content of the video, if you haven't already, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and like this video. Leave me a comment down below letting me know what you think about the topic so I can know what to do in the future. I'm really interested in the Colombia videos and I hope you guys like them too. That being said, let's jump right into this video. Just last week, my brother and I got back from a 2-week trip to Colombia. I was there 2 weeks. I think he was there closer to a month and a half, and then he's also gone for another couple months before that on another trip. So today's video is going to be the knowledge that we've pooled together from our collective experience in Colombia and my take on things, being that I've spent the majority of my time in Europe. So I'm going to be comparing with the knowledge I have from the US and from Europe and telling you guys the truth about what I thought about Colombia. Although I was only in Colombia for 2 weeks, 1 week in a city called Medellin, 1 in a city called Santa Marta, I feel like I got a really genuine experience. My brother and I really avoid touristy things. We avoid touristy hotels and restaurants and traps. We try to have the most local experience possible, and I do feel like I got a good genuine feel of the Colombian experience from my time there. We spoke to a lot of Colombians, we did the things that they suggest we do, we did the things that they do, and I think I have a pretty good understanding of the genuine Colombian experience. So now that you know exactly where I'm coming from, I'm gonna tell you what I thought about Colombia. And Colombia is fantastic, but it's not for everyone. It's definitely a special country. There is something interesting in Colombia. I definitely enjoyed my time there, but it is not for everyone. It can be a little bit difficult. It can be a bit raucous at times, and I'm gonna be telling you about that right now. The first thing you need to know about visiting Colombia is how much Spanish you should go in speaking. Now, if you already speak Spanish, you can use this bar at the bottom to skip to any other part of the video that might interest you or skip to the next point. But if you are not a Spanish speaker, if you don't know much Spanish, it is so important that you hear this point. The first thing I'm going to say here is Colombia probably isn't the best option if you don't speak any Spanish. There is not a lot of tourism infrastructure in Colombia, so that means there's also not a lot of English speaking infrastructure in Colombia. This was not a problem for me or my brother, being that we both speak Spanish, but if you are looking to visit the country and you don't have any knowledge of Spanish, this could definitely be a big hiccup, especially if you're looking for a genuine experience and not just the all-inclusive resorts. Now, don't get me wrong, there is some light English-speaking infrastructure. For example, my brother told me that in the city of Cartagena, there is quite a lot of English speakers, being that it's the most touristy city in Colombia. So if you're going somewhere like that on a cruise, or if you're just flying in for an all-inclusive, it probably won't be a big issue for you. But if you are looking to explore the inner part of the country or the more local hangouts, I could definitely see it being a pretty big problem. Out of my 1 week in Medellin, I don't think that we ran across anyone that spoke English, honestly. We definitely did find some people that would try to speak English to us, but it was never the people that you wanted to speak English. This applied for Santa Marta as well. What I mean when I say this is the people that you needed to speak English, like people who would work at money exchange places or hospitality or restaurants, they never spoke English. And the people you didn't want to speak English, like the scammers, the people that get you in tourist traps, their English was always good, surprisingly good. So it is a bit alarming, and it does take you back a bit because you're expecting the people that speak English to be in tourism, and they are in an extent, but not in the kind of tourism you want to be a part of. I can definitely say that our most interesting experiences in Colombia were in Spanish. The places we went that were most fascinating, most local and interesting and cultural were definitely in Spanish. So if you don't have any Spanish Spanish experience, Colombia could be really difficult. Now, I'm not above plugging myself here. I am offering Spanish and English lessons online. You can do private lessons with me. I will teach you not just the basics of Spanish, but we can go all the way up to C1 or C2 fluency, and that applies for English as well. If you're interested in doing private lessons with me, go ahead and send me a DM over on Instagram or shoot me an email, and I would be more than happy to talk with you about it. Buena suerte. The next big point that I feel like is worth talking about is the money in Colombia. The biggest thing that I have to say here is Colombia is not a cashless country. Coming from Europe and the US, where so many places won't even accept cash, they all accept card, Colombia is the exact opposite. Hardly anywhere accepted card in Colombia, and that was by far one of the most frustrating things that I experienced. It almost felt like taking a trip 20 or 30 years in the past, because you would go somewhere, you would see something you wanted, you would offer to buy it, and they would say, we don't accept card, or if we do accept card, we're gonna charge you a really high rate for it. So that was very disappointing. In a second, I'm gonna tell you how much money you should be bringing per person per week, but before I get to that, the first thing I suggest is you avoid airport exchanges. This is not just Colombia, this is all over the world, but they charge exorbitant rates to exchange your money, and it's really not worth it. I suggest you find a more local place, perhaps in your neighborhood or in the city you're going to, because there are plenty of them, and make sure you know the exchange rate before you go in so you don't get scammed. Again, these people probably are not going to speak English, so maybe even look up the words you should use, some phraseology like necesito cambiar mi dinero or quiero cambiar a pesos or something like that that would help you navigate the situation a bit more smoothly. Now, as for how much money you should bring every week, this is going to vary from person to person. My brother and I, we are pretty light spenders. We generally don't spend a lot of money, but I suggest a minimum of $50 per person per week. Now, I'm not saying you're only going to spend $50 per week. I'm saying this is probably the amount that you would spend in cash. I think that both of us collectively brought around $175, and then at the end we still had maybe $5 or $6 left over. If you're planning on taking a lot of taxis, buying a lot of street food, buying a lot of knickknacks off the street, eating local, then I suggest you bring more money, perhaps $100 in cash per person per week. Of course, you are going to have to change this over to pesos, and that does get really confusing considering the exchange rate is like 3,800 pesos per US dollar. In Colombia, you can literally be a millionaire and practically have no money. The big thing here is to look for places that take card. So in our experience, we found that supermarkets take card, a lot of big restaurants, pretty much any chain thing took cards, like a chain restaurant or a chain store. Any big stores in general, whether it be clothing or food, technology, malls, whatever, would normally take card. Also, try to look for online bookings. So if you're gonna take a bus somewhere or any mode of transit, try to find it online. If you don't want to use public transit, which I'm going to talk about in a second, try to use Uber or Cabify or something like that. Doing this is going to help preserve your physical cash, which you will need. So try to reserve it as much as possible by doing things with card. Another big thing that we always do is cook at your Airbnb. This is my biggest suggestion, and I'm going to talk about Airbnbs in a second, but please listen when I say please do not eat out every meal. You should be cooking at least 2 meals a day at your Airbnb, because you can buy this food from the supermarket with card, you can take it back to your Airbnb, and you can cook it yourself. For one, you're gonna save loads of money, but two, it's a lot healthier for you, and three, you are gonna avoid spending so much cash. The next big thing for me that I wanna talk about in Colombia is safety. This is probably the biggest thing for me anytime I'm traveling, but especially going to a destination like Colombia. In general, I'm gonna say Colombia is a relatively safe country. I definitely wouldn't say I felt as comfortable as the US or as Europe, but overall for traveling, I felt pretty comfortable in Colombia. There's some common sense things that you can do to make sure that you have the safest experience. One of the biggest ones is to don't be flashy. In Colombian Spanish, they taught me a phrase that is dando papayas, which literally means giving papayas, but in the street lingo of Colombia, that means you're being flashy. Don't be dando papayas. Don't be giving away papayas. Another big tip for safety is don't carry bags. So my first day in Colombia, I carried a backpack with me into the city center, and I felt every eye on me. I felt extremely uncomfortable. People were staring at me. It was not a comfortable situation, and it was really inconvenient because if you do carry a bag, you are automatically going to be a target for all sorts of things. Small bags are fine. I would carry a satchel with me, but I don't suggest you carry around a book bag. This is what I was carrying, my Fjallraven, and they did not have this brand in Colombia either, so I just immediately stuck out. I would avoid carrying backpacks, purses, anything that can easily be swiped off of you or cut off of you. And when you are carrying those things, especially in crowded places like the metro or the city center, make sure you have them to where you can see your stuff. So I would carry a little shoulder bag, and I would try to wear it on the front of my body. So normally it sits on the side. I would carry it on my front. I had my phone in it. I had some other little knickknacks, but nothing else. Don't carry too much cash on you at once. Don't carry jewelry. Don't carry expensive things, because it is a real possibility that someone comes up and cuts that off of you, or God forbid, pulls it off of you or something like that. So just avoid carrying bags. The last tip I have is to stay in known areas and don't go out past dark. I have to say, this mistake was easy to make in Colombia. One day in particular, my brother and I were in Medellin. We had gone to El Museo de Antioquia, I think it was called. It's like the main museum in Medellin. It's in the very city center. When we left the museum, we got a little bit turned around and we ended up going on this side street, which looked fine at the time. The further we got down the street, as in maybe 5 or 6 minutes of walking, the worse it started to look. It went from decent to not so good to bad to really bad. And I have to say, what I saw in that street, just the condition of things, the way I felt, I don't think I've ever felt so unsafe traveling before. I mean, it changed from a decent street to a really, really bad one immediately. I mean, there were people shooting drugs on the sidewalk. It was not a comfortable situation to be in at all. So in that situation, what we did, we knew there was a bit more touristy area to the right, so we just took a ride after walking on that street for a few minutes. But just be aware of your surroundings and try to avoid places that you don't see other tourists going. Looking back on it, there were not any tourists on that street, so I think we probably should have taken that as a sign to don't go there. And if you do find yourself in a situation like that, think quick, be aware of your surroundings, and just get yourself out of it. I promise your survival instinct kicks in, and it's not as scary as it sounds, but just be aware of your surroundings. It does get dark pretty early in Colombia, as in like before 6 p.m. or right around 6 p.m. So do try to be back at your Airbnb or your apartment by that time. This really sounded awful to me, as I love being out late at night. I would very frequently be walking around Seville at 11 o'clock or 10:30 just walking, but that is not something I suggest you do in Colombia. Be back at home, watch some Netflix, drink a glass of wine, something chill, but don't be out past dark. Okay, so the last big thing I want to tell you guys about is some tourism hacks / tips. The biggest thing I have to say here is so many scams. So many scams. Colombia is not built for tourism. Coming from Europe and the US, especially Europe, there is a definite infrastructure for tourism. Public transit signs are in English. A lot of the directional things are in English. People are very willing to help. There's a big tourism infrastructure and a big tourism culture. Even the things that aren't necessarily touristic are somewhat touristic. Like, people just know not to bother the tourists. People know not to harass them or to commit crimes with them. Like, they know that tourism is extremely important in those countries. But Colombia was not like that. The biggest thing that really got under my skin in Colombia was everyone tries to scam you or sell you something. This was by far the most frustrating thing in Colombia, because these people absolutely come out of nowhere and they are aggressive and they will not stop trying to sell you stuff, giving you things, convincing you to buy things. It is extremely irritating. I was offered all sorts of stuff. I was offered food, goods, candy, drugs, prostitution, trips. I mean, you name it, people tried to sell it to us in Colombia, and it was constant. That was the most annoying part. It was all the time. One of the things that really got under my skin is you would frequently see children begging, or adults with children, and they would get the children to come up to you asking for things. I'm a very generous person and I don't mind giving money to people, but the thing is, you can't do that all the time in Colombia, or else you literally would not have any money left. I cannot tell you how many times while I was in Colombia Colombia, either pregnant women or women with babies or children just by themselves would come up and ask for things, and it's so irritating for me because I can't give it to them. You know, you feel horrible, but you can't just go around giving things all day to people, or else you would literally have nothing, and it just makes you more of a target in the future. This was definitely worse in Santa Marta, the coastal city, than it was in Medellin, and my brother said that in Cartagena, Colombia's biggest tourist city, it was excruciating. It was horrible, but it was all the time constant that people were trying to sell me things. We were in Santa Marta for a week, and during the week we were there, I went to the beach only twice, and there's a reason why I went only twice. The first time I went to a pretty secluded beach, and it was a relatively peaceful experience. I don't know, maybe 5 people came up to me trying to sell me things. The next day, I decided to go to one of the more local beaches, and I had a totally different experience. Pretty much from the second that I walked up onto that beach, I was just bombarded with people. Granted, I tried to look pretty normal. I was wearing relatively nondescript, bland clothes. All I had was a book and a towel. I literally didn't even carry my phone or my watch because I didn't want to stick out that much. From the time I put my towel down, from the time I left, I think was about an hour and a half. And during that hour and a half, I would say no less than 50 people tried to come up to me and sell me things or talk to me. I mean, it was constant. It was every couple of minutes someone would come up to me, talking to me, and they were aggressive too. It's not like they would just come up, ask if you want something and walk away. I would say about 50% of the people that approached me would come up to me, they would ask me if I wanted something, I would say no thank you, and they would walk away. I'd say about 25% would come up, try to sell me something, I would say no thank you, and they would stick around for a few seconds. And then I would say another 25% wouldn't leave. One lady literally stuck around for like 2 or 3 minutes trying to sell me a massage. That one woman in particular came up to me, asked if I wanted a massage. I said no. She asked again. We argued back and forth for a second, so I just ignored her. The next thing I knew, I felt like this liquid on my back, and she just like started massaging me in the middle of this beach. I told her, I was like, no, I really don't want you to do this. I don't have any money. I'm not gonna pay you for this. And she was like, no, don't worry about it. Tomorrow when you come back, you can pay me. And she like wouldn't take no for an answer. I really don't like that. That really got under my skin, especially because I told her not to touch me. Thankfully, she did go away after 2 or 3 minutes, but it's things like that that just really get under my skin. It's as if they don't respect personal boundaries and they don't understand what no means. Even while I was there, people would just like shout at me and call things out to me, which was really strange. There was one particular group of like older men who were sitting off the beach, and they were just like, oye, gringo, ¿qué haces? Gringo is, in every other part of the Spanish speaking world but Colombia, a pretty big insult for Americans. But just things like that were kind of embarrassing. The thing that really tipped it for me, I was there reading my book. I was laying on my stomach reading my book like this, and these like, I don't know, maybe mid-20s were playing soccer. One of them kicked the ball relatively close to me, which is fine, I don't mind. And his friend came over, and in his attempt to kick the ball, he just so happened to kick sand all over me. And I know his friends asked him to do it because they were all laughing and congratulating him in Spanish. I'm not gonna say it was a humiliating experience, but it was definitely something that was extremely rude and just unacceptable behavior for an adult. After that, I decided not to go back to the beach. I just stayed at the pool at our apartment building. I enjoyed that. That was loads of fun. But it's things like that that really take away from the experience in a country like Colombia. So the big takeaway here is Colombia is a lovely country. It is beautiful, it definitely has its charm, but it is not for everyone. If you're not prepared to have a bit of an off the beaten path experience, I probably would not suggest Colombia to you, and you definitely kind of have to grow a thick skin, because if not, you will really be freaked out by some of the aggressive people and the tactics they employ to try to get money out of you. If you're planning on going to Colombia, use common sense, follow these tips that I've given you, and you will have an enjoyable experience. I did love Colombia. I don't know that I'll be going back anytime soon, but it was a great experience and I'm glad that I went. Alright guys, that wraps up this super long video. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed it, please be sure to like it, subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment down below. Thanks so much everyone. I'll see you next time. Muchas gracias. Hasta luego. Ciao.